My name's Nathan, I'm 27, and last Christmas Eve was the night I realized just how deep the cracks in my family really ran. If you've ever sat through a holiday dinner with relatives who think humiliation is a form of entertainment, you'll understand the quiet burn that comes with it. But last year, things didn't just sting. They cut in a way that made me decide I would never let them step on me again. Christmas Eve at my aunt's house has always been a tradition. My family has this image they like to project: warm, generous, close-knit. But anyone who knows us beneath the surface understands it's more about appearances than love. My Aunt Carol is the ringleader of it all. She's loud, sharp-tongued, and thrives on being the center of attention. Every year, she orchestrates the gift exchange like she's hosting an awards show, cracking jokes, making snide remarks, and deciding who deserves recognition and who doesn't. My parents, for reasons I still don't fully understand, let her set the tone. That night, the living room glowed with fairy lights. The smell of ham and cinnamon candles clung to the air. Everyone, my cousins, uncles, aunts, sat in a circle as Carol handed out gifts. She made a big production out of it. This one's for Emily, because she's the first in the family to graduate this year. And this one's for Jake, because he finally got that promotion. Cheers to you. Each time, laughter and applause filled the room. She liked to highlight their accomplishments as though she had personally funded them. I sat there quietly, watching the pile of boxes dwindle. Deep down, I knew what was coming. It wasn't the first time I'd been brushed aside. For years, I'd been the cousin who never quite measured up. When I was younger, it was because I was quieter than the others, more bookish. In college, it was because I switched majors and took longer to graduate. And after graduation, because I wasn't settled, yet like everyone else. To them, my path looked like failure. They never asked about the work I was doing on the side, the long hours building something of my own. They only saw what wasn't there yet. Carol reached the bottom of the pile and paused dramatically. She looked at me with that sly smile she always wore when she thought she was about to land a joke. And as for Nathan, she held her hands up theatrically, palms empty. We didn't get you anything this year, because, frankly, you haven't earned it. The room erupted in laughter. Not uncomfortable chuckles, genuine laughter. Even my parents gave these nervous little smiles, like they were embarrassed but too afraid to challenge her. My cousins smirked, some avoiding my eyes, others watching to see if I'd react. I sat there with my hands folded in my lap, trying to keep my face calm. Inside, though, my chest burned. My ears rang with the weight of humiliation. I could feel every pair of eyes on me, waiting for me to laugh it off or shrink away. And for a moment, I almost did. It would have been easier. That was the role I'd always played, the quiet one, the target they could prod and jab without resistance. But then something inside me snapped. I leaned down, reached into my bag, and pulled out a small, carefully wrapped box. I set it gently on the coffee table in front of me. The sound of it hitting the wood was louder than it should have been in that silent room. I straightened up, looked directly at my aunt, and said calmly, "That's fine, because I brought something that will change this family forever." The laughter died instantly. The glow of the Christmas tree seemed colder, harsher, as every face turned toward me. My cousin Emily stopped mid-sip of her cider. My uncle's grin faltered. Even Carol blinked, her smirk fading as she stared at the box like it might explode. And in that moment, sitting there with a sea of shocked faces surrounding me, I felt something I hadn't in years: control. I didn't rush to explain. I let the silence stretch, thick and uncomfortable. For the first time, they weren't laughing at me. They were waiting on me. What none of them knew was that I hadn't come to that Christmas empty-handed, no matter what Carol thought. I'd spent the past year quietly digging into family matters I was never supposed to know about. Secrets whispered in hushed tones, documents tucked away in drawers, financial arrangements that weren't as clean as they wanted to believe. I hadn't planned on using it that night, but humiliation has a way of flipping a switch you didn't even know was there. Carol leaned forward finally, her voice tight but curious. "What's in the box, Nathan?" I met her gaze, my voice steady. "Something that belongs to all of us. Something you've kept hidden long enough." My mother's face paled. My father shifted uncomfortably in his chair. And as I looked around the room, watching their expressions morph from smug amusement to unease, I knew the night was only just beginning. The room was suffocatingly quiet after I set that box down. It wasn't very big, maybe the size of a shoebox, neatly wrapped in plain red paper with a gold ribbon. But in that moment, it carried more weight than the entire pile of presents Aunt Carol had paraded around the room. My fingers rested lightly on the lid as I leaned back in my chair, letting the silence drag. For years, they'd all talked over me, laughed at me, treated me like I was invisible. Now, they couldn't take their eyes off me. Carol cleared her throat, trying to regain control. Nathan, if this is some kind of prank, it's not funny. Her voice had lost its bite. She was defensive now, maybe even nervous. I tilted my head and gave the smallest smile. I don't do pranks, Aunt Carol. You should know that by now. My mom shifted in her seat, her hands twisting the hem of her sweater. My dad avoided my gaze completely, staring instead at the lights blinking on the tree. The rest of my relatives glanced between me and the box, whispers starting to ripple. I tapped the top lightly. This isn't a gift in the traditional sense. Think of it more as information. Something you all deserve to know. The words hung in the air like smoke. Emily, my cousin, leaned forward, her curiosity getting the better of her. Information about what? I caught the edge in her tone, half mocking, half genuinely curious. For as long as I could remember, she had always sided with Carol. But even she couldn't resist the bait. I didn't answer her directly. Instead, I let my eyes flicker back to Carol. It's interesting, isn't it? How much effort goes into keeping up appearances? The decorations, the gifts, the speeches about who deserves recognition. But when the wrapping paper gets torn away, what's left underneath isn't always so pretty. Carol's lips tightened. Spit it out, Nathan. What exactly are you implying? Her voice was sharp again, but I could hear the edge of fear now. I recognized it because I'd felt it myself so many times in this family. Cornered, ridiculed, powerless. But tonight the roles had shifted, and she knew it. I took my time untying the ribbon. The gold bow slid off easily, landing soundlessly in my lap. The paper tore with a soft rip, each movement magnified in the tense silence. Inside was a simple black box. I opened it slowly and pulled out a thick envelope, its contents sealed tightly. I held it up for everyone to see. This, I said quietly, contains documents. Bank statements. Transactions. Agreements. Things most of you probably didn't know existed. Gasps scattered around the room. My father finally looked up at me, his eyes wide. My mother's face went stark white, her lips parting like she was about to protest but couldn't form the words. Carol barked a laugh, but it was hollow. You expect us to believe you've got anything important in there? Don't make me laugh. You've never been responsible enough to manage your own life, let alone. I cut her off. My voice was calm, but sharper than I intended. That's where you're wrong. I've been quiet, yes. But quiet doesn't mean blind. And it doesn't mean stupid. Her mouth snapped shut. I turned the envelope over in my hands, letting the sound of the paper crinkle fill the silence. This isn't about me being overlooked for gifts, or the jokes, or the way you all dismiss me. This is about truth. And truth has a funny way of ruining carefully crafted illusions. I set the envelope back on the box and folded my hands, meeting every pair of eyes in the room one by one. My pulse thundered in my ears, but I didn't let it show. I wanted them to feel every second of this. Finally, my uncle, usually the peacemaker, spoke up. Nathan, whatever it is, maybe we should discuss it privately. This isn't the place. On the contrary, I said softly, this is exactly the place. Because for once, everyone needs to hear this at the same time. No more whispers. No more behind closed doors conversations. Tonight, everything comes out. The weight of my words pressed into the room, and no one dared to move. Carol's face was flushed now, her confidence unraveling. My mother looked like she might faint. My father had sunk deeper into his chair, his jaw clenched tight. And in that charged silence, with the unopened envelope still resting in plain sight, I realized the power had shifted completely. For the first time in years, they were afraid of what I might say. I leaned back, folding my arms, and let the tension stretch even further. But maybe I shouldn't be the one to explain. Maybe it's time someone else told the truth. My eyes landed squarely on my parents. The room collectively inhaled, waiting, hanging on the edge of what would happen next. My father's jaw flexed as if he were grinding invisible stones between his teeth. His hands, always steady and firm, tapped erratically against the armrest of his chair. My mother, on the other hand, looked like a porcelain doll about to crack. Her fingers trembled as she clutched her wine glass, and when she finally set it down, it rattled against the table. For a moment, No one spoke. The Christmas tree lights blinked on and off like they were mocking the silence. Finally, my father cleared his throat. "Nathan," he said, his voice low but taut, "I don't know what you think you're doing, but this isn't the time or the place." I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. "Isn't it? Because it seems to me the time and place has always been decided by other people in this family. Carol humiliates me in front of everyone, and no one bats an eye. But the second I put something real on the table, suddenly it's too public." My cousin Jake shifted uncomfortably. "Come on, man. Maybe you should just chill. It's Christmas." I turned to him, my voice steady. "Christmas is supposed to be about family, right? About trust, about honesty. If that's the case, then what better time than now?" Carol let out a brittle laugh. "You're making a fool of yourself, Nathan, waving around some envelope like it means anything. If you really had something worth saying, you'd have said it already. Stop being so dramatic." I smiled faintly, though my chest felt like it might burst from the pressure of the moment. "Oh, I'll say it. But I think it'll mean more if you admit it first." That struck a nerve. Carol's face darkened, and she sat up straighter. "Admit what?" she snapped, her voice a little too sharp. The cousins and uncles exchanged confused glances. Emily leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "Wait, what's actually in there? Are you saying Aunt Carol did something?" I didn't answer her. I let the question hang, heavy and poisonous, knowing it would eat away at their composure far faster than any direct accusation from me. My mother suddenly stood up, her chair screeching against the hardwood floor. "Enough," she said, her voice cracking. This isn't appropriate. Nathan, please, put that envelope away." That reaction was all the confirmation the room needed. A murmur rippled through the family, a current of suspicion and unease. My father's face went pale. Carol's eyes darted toward my mother, a flicker of panic breaking through her carefully composed mask. I stayed seated, calm, deliberate. "Why, Mom? What are you so afraid of them hearing?" Her lips parted and closed again. She looked at my father like she wanted him to rescue her, but he just sat there, rigid, his fists clenched. For years, they had painted me as the weak one, the quiet, awkward cousin who couldn't quite measure up. But in that moment, I saw fear in their eyes, and it felt like a shift in gravity. I leaned back in my chair, my voice dropping lower. "See, this family has built itself on secrets and lies. And everyone here has played their part in pretending not to notice. But when those secrets come out, they don't just disappear. They stain everything." My cousin Emily spoke again, her voice quieter this time, tinged with suspicion. What kind of secrets?" Carol slammed her hand down on the coffee table, making the ornaments rattle. "Don't listen to him. He's trying to ruin Christmas with his nonsense. That envelope is nothing but empty threats." But the look on her face betrayed her words. Her voice was too shrill, her composure cracking like ice under pressure. I picked up the envelope and weighed it in my hand, letting the paper crinkle loudly. "If it's nonsense, then you won't mind if I read it out loud." The room fell into dead silence. My heart thudded in my chest, but I kept my gaze steady, watching as my mother's eyes filled with tears, my father's face hardened into stone, and Carol's fingers tightened on the armrest like claws. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one on trial. They were. And just as I slipped my thumb under the seal of the envelope, Carol shot to her feet, her voice shaking. "Don't you dare, Nathan. Don't you dare open that in front of them." The living room erupted, voices overlapping, cousins asking questions, uncles trying to calm things down, my mother whispering frantically to my father. The envelope hovered in my hand like a lit match over gasoline. That was the exact moment I realized I wasn't just holding paper. I was holding control over every single person in that room. I sat there, the envelope trembling ever so slightly in my hands, but not from fear, from adrenaline, from years of being the quiet one, the overlooked one, the butt of every joke. My thumb slipped under the seal, and for a moment, all I could hear was the faint crackle of paper tearing. The room stilled again, the voices cutting off mid-whisper. My relatives, who just minutes ago were laughing at my expense, now leaned forward like a jury waiting for a verdict. I pulled out the papers and spread them neatly on the coffee table. Rows of numbers, account statements, signatures, the lifeblood of secrets. "This," I began, my voice low but steady, "is a record of transactions made over the past 5 years. Transfers, withdrawals, loans taken out in family names. At first, I didn't know what I was looking at. But the more I dug, the more it became clear. Aunt Carol wasn't just the self-appointed gift master. She was managing money that didn't belong to her. A gasp rippled through the room. Emily sat back like she'd been slapped. Jake muttered something under his breath, but no one caught it. My uncle's face drained of color. Carol stood frozen, her hand gripping the armrest so tightly her knuckles whitened. "You don't know what you're talking about," she hissed. "Oh, I think I do," I said calmly, flipping to another page. "Here's an account under your name, Carol. Look familiar? Regular deposits, withdrawals marked cash. Some of those deposits came from funds my parents contributed for what you called the family investment pool. Do you want to explain why that money was siphoned into your personal account?" Her eyes darted wildly, first to my parents, then to the cousins, then back to me. "It was for safekeeping. For emergencies," she snapped, but even she didn't sound convinced. I leaned forward. "Then why did the withdrawals line up with payments on that luxury car you drive? Or the renovations on your kitchen? Or the vacation fund you told us all was your reward for years of hard work?" The room erupted again. My cousins were talking over each other, demanding answers. My uncle shouted questions. Carol raised her voice, shrieking about how I was twisting everything. But it was too late. The paper didn't lie. And then I dropped the real bomb. "These aren't just your accounts, Carol. They're Dad's too." The room went still. My father's face turned an alarming shade of gray. I held up another document, my hand steady now, the trembling gone. "Here's a loan taken out in my name. Without my knowledge. Signed by you, Dad. That's fraud. And the money? It was transferred directly into Carol's account. Mom, did you know about this?" My mother's eyes filled with tears, and she buried her face in her hands. That was answer enough. The betrayal I'd always suspected but never confirmed sat there in black and white. They hadn't just mocked me. They'd used me. My name, my identity, my credit. Also, Carol could fund her lifestyle, and my father could keep up appearances. I took a deep breath. "Do you understand now why I said this would change everything? You laughed at me because I wasn't successful enough, because I hadn't earned a gift. Meanwhile, you were literally stealing from me." My cousins erupted in outrage. Emily stood and pointed a finger at Carol. "Is this true? Did you actually use his name for loans? That's illegal." Carol tried to shout over the noise, her face blotchy and red. "He's lying. He forged this to make us look bad." But the documents had account numbers, official stamps, and signatures that matched perfectly. I had made copies, contacted banks, and had confirmations tucked away. If anyone doubted me, I could prove it beyond a shadow of a doubt. I let the chaos swirl for a moment, then raised my voice, firm and cutting through the noise. "I've already taken steps. The banks are aware. The loans are frozen pending investigation. And if necessary, I will press charges." The room went silent again, the words hitting like a hammer. Carol's face twisted into rage. "How dare you do this on Christmas Eve? How dare you humiliate us like this?" I looked her dead in the eyes. "How dare you steal from me, belittle me, and laugh at me every year like I was nothing? You thought I'd never stand up for myself. Well, here I am." For a moment, nobody moved. Then my cousin Jake muttered, "Unbelievable," and shook his head. Emily sat down heavily, still staring at the papers. One by one, the cousins turned away from Carol and my parents, disgust plain on their faces. My uncle spoke up, his voice low but firm. This is too much. We trusted you. We let you run things. And this is what you did." He pushed his chair back and stood, shaking his head in disbelief. Carol tried to protest, but the tide had turned. The family that once laughed with her was now glaring at her with anger and betrayal. My parents sat frozen, the weight of their guilt pressing down like a stone. I gathered the papers back into the envelope and stood. My legs felt steady, strong, even as my heart raced. "I'm done being your scapegoat. I'm done being the quiet one you can step on. From now on, I decide where I stand in this family. And if that means standing apart, so be it." The room buzzed with shock and disbelief. Carol sputtered, trying to find words, but no one rushed to defend her this time. My father stared at the floor, his pride shattered. My mother wept silently, unable to meet my eyes. I slung my bag over my shoulder and picked up the envelope. "Merry Christmas," I said evenly, and walked out. The cold air outside bit into my skin, but it felt cleaner, freer than the suffocating living room I had left behind. For the first time, I wasn't walking out in shame. I was walking out in control. The fallout came quickly in the days that followed. Banks contacted Carol. Investigations were opened. Cousin stopped answering her calls. My uncle cut ties completely. My parents tried reaching out, but the betrayal was too deep to mend with a phone call. I told them I'd consider speaking again when they admitted everything publicly, and so far, they haven't had the courage. As for me, I've never felt lighter. The years of being laughed at, ignored, dismissed, gone in one night. Because the truth, once exposed, doesn't go back into the box. And that night, I gave my family the only gift they truly deserved: the truth, wrapped in silence, handed back with their laughter still echoing in their ears.